Hi, my name's Jake. I'm going to go through and do an anesthesia machine check. So first, when I walk into the OR, I'm going to go to the back of the machine. I'm going to check that I have the appropriate cylinders in the right spot. And then I'm going to open up, starting with my oxygen, leave it open for a couple seconds just to let it pressurize. I do the same with my air and nitrous oxide. And then since I'm back here, I'm going to just double check my ambu bag, make sure that it works, and that when I apply pressure, it does have some PEEP. It looks good. I'm going to check, make sure that my pipeline is secure in the wall, and then also that my pipeline supply is good into the machine. Since I'm still back here, I'll hook up my suction to the wall, turn it on, make sure it's appropriate, which it is. I'm going to come forward, I'm going to look at my pressures. So specifically, my oxygen needs to be at least 1,000 PSI, which it is, and then my pipeline pressure should all be at least, or about 50 PSI, which they are. And then I'm going to look at my vaporizers. I'm going to make sure that they're full and that the caps are on tight. They are, so that's good. And I'm going to move forward and do a low pressure test. And to do that, I am going to double check this first, which is my suction bulb. It's good. So I'm going to hook it into the common gas outlet. I'm going to open up my common gas valve, and I'm going to do this until it occludes and holds. It's got to hold for 10 seconds. It does. That checks my low pressure system. Now I'm going to check my vaporizers the same way. I'm going to open up my ISO. It's open. Make sure it stays closed for 10 seconds. It does. And I'm going to check my interlock safety by trying to open up my SIVO. It doesn't, so that's good. That means the interlock safety works. Turn off my ISO. Now I'm going to turn on my SIVO. Do this again. It stays down for 10 seconds, and I cannot open my ISO, so that is another safety pass. So I'll disconnect that, or sorry, turn it off, disconnect, close my valve, put it away. Now I'm going to turn my machine on. I'm going to turn my monitor on. While I'm waiting for everything, I'm going to check my flow meter. I'm going to turn my air up. It's going to go all the way up without any problems, and then as I turn it down, it should also come down without any problems, and it does. So now for nitrous, I'm going to do the same thing, but I'm also going to double check that it can't make a hypoxic concentration. So as I increase my nitrous, my oxygen should also go up, which it does, and that should maintain a 3 nitrous to 1 oxygen ratio on the liters per minute. So then I'm going to increase my oxygen all the way, make sure there's no problems. There isn't any. And now going down, as I decrease my oxygen, the nitrous will also go down to make sure it doesn't create a hypoxic concentration, which is what happens. So we're good there. Now I'm going to calibrate my machine. I'm going to open up here and take out the O2 caliber plug. Leave that open. I'm going to hit my ventilator. Go to calibration, O2 sensor, 21%. We're going to let it calibrate. While it's calibrating, I'm going to double check that my alarms are all set on my patient monitor and that they're good and in the right zone. And then I'm going to double check that my ventilator alarm is also good, specifically on the pressure limit, which it is. While it's still calibrating, I'm going to look at my CO2 cartridge over here. I'm going to make sure that it is not dry, or I'm going to make sure it's dry and not desiccated, and that the date isn't within the last couple days. It's appropriate and it's not used up. And I'm going to make sure that all my cables are here and ready. So I have my blood pressure, my heart rate cable with stickers for EKG, my SpO2, and my EtCO2. So now that this is done, I'm going to close out. There, and I'm going to check my scavenging system now. So to do that, sorry, I'm going to come one more time over here. I'm going to occlude the circuit. I'm going to make sure that my APL valve is on min. I'm going to inflate my mass ventilation bag. I'm going to deflate it. That will increase or inflate my scavenging bag, which will then deflate. And that is good. That means the scavenging system is working. Now I'm going to do my high pressure check. I'm going to use this. I'm going to increase the pressure until I get up to a pressure of 30, which is where I'm at. I'm gonna sit here and maintain, which is just making sure that there's no leaks in the internal system. Now I'm gonna check my alarm, putting it up above 40. We hear it alarming. And we're gonna wait one more just for the sustained alarm. Good. So now as I lower or open my APL valve back up, I'm gonna go 30 to 20. The pressure gauge should follow, and as I decrease, it'll continue to follow it down until I'm open and the pressure's back and it's been released. So now, we're gonna connect to our artificial lung. And I'm going to increase to 2 liters. And although I would never do this with a patient that's actually connected, I'm just gonna do this to make sure everything's up and inflated. I'm gonna switch over to my ventilator, and I'm going to assess my bellows and my ventilator. So the bellows needs to go all the way up to help it increase. I'm just gonna increase my flow. We're good there. And then I'm just evaluating, since we have the pediatric artificial lung on, my volumes are set lower, so my volumes are only set to 250. So anything above 200 is adequate, which is what we have. And then before I check my disconnect, I'm just gonna switch it over to the valve, to the bag. And I wanna make sure that I can mask ventilate this patient. And I'm gonna increase my APL just a little bit to help, since I don't have any expiration. And so now I just wanna make sure I can give the appropriate volumes, which I can. So I'm gonna open this back up and turn my ventilator back on, so I kind of start thinking, and then I'll check my disconnect. And then I'm also checking and making sure I don't have any kinks or leaks, which would stop me from getting my appropriate volumes. And also like any cracks in any of the hardware. And then I'm gonna evaluate my one-way valves. So my inspiratory valve should only open on inspiration, and expiratory should only open on expiration, which is what they're doing. So that's good. And now I'm gonna disconnect, and this is to get me a disconnect alarm. And so now we just have to wait for the bellows to completely collapse, which take just a second longer. Perfect, so now we're gonna get a low flow alarm, and then that will follow our disconnect alarm. So there's a low flow, and one more. Perfect, so that's our disconnect. So now I'm gonna just put my mask on because we're done with this. I'm gonna switch it back over to valve, and I'm going to increase my APL just to get my bellows. Bellows are good. I'm gonna leave that, so it's good and ready, everything's connected. Now I'm gonna go through, make sure that my flow meters are all off, make sure my vaporizers are off, make sure I have the appropriate equipment that I need for my patient, and any extra supplies I might need. Make sure my monitors are all set to the right parameters, and especially my ventilator. Make sure that is good and appropriate for the patient. One last time, I'm just gonna make sure my suction is good and appropriate, which it is. And so now I can document that my machine check is done, and I can go get the patient.